Finally, beyond the gates, the oft-times dreamed of other side. And what did I see? A fractured family, a shadow of what it used to be. Why this fate? Many progress, but didn't elevate, shaking my head, my heart aches. Because you want the best for those you love, for goodness sake. But we must want what's needed, and essentials have to be in place, because some things can't be replaced. I left behind much love, but much more hate, only to return to glassy eyes and halos of haze. Stubborn and stuck in our ways, let's change, I say. Response, who are you to say? Who are you who lost his way to come home thinking you're better? This is what I hear, not what they say. Alone and not alone, home and not home. This seems to be my existing state. For how long, who's to say? So with a sigh and heavy heart, I press on day after day, still grateful to be beyond those gates.
Starting last semester, fall of 2023, it was on display at Buchanan Hall Atrium Gallery, and we partnered with the Barnes Foundation in Philadelphia and the Carter School for Peace and Conflict Resolution at Mason to develop the exhibition and public programming to engage students around topics like incarceration and justice and freedom and the role of art in healing and growth. Faces of Resilience is an exhibition of 14 currently and formerly incarcerated artists who are incarcerated at the State Correctional Institute Phoenix in Pennsylvania. And we first started the exhibition in the Fairfax campus fall of 2023, and then we moved it to Mason Exhibitions Arlington in spring of 2024. And with the second iteration of Faces of Resilience, we added 3 professional artists to the show. So in addition to the 14 from SCI Phoenix, we have Maria Gaspar, Sara Bennett, and Winfred Rembert.
So yes, with the inclusion of the iteration at Arlington, it was the intent to also establish and showcase a female narrative into the space conversation. So we added works by photographer Sara Bennett, who is New York based. Her works span a 10-year span of women who are incarcerated, and as a former lawyer, she was able to receive special permission to photograph and access of them doing their daily work. So there's images of people that were incarcerated who were folding baby clothes, who were in a nursery, who were in a soup kitchen, preparing meals for children. And from that, I learned much about motherhood and in relation to the intersection of motherhood in a carceral space. So Sara's works span years of engagement, and the works that we have here have them in prison, and then also when they've received clemency and they have been returned in the bedrooms and different kind of scene. We have work by Maria Gaspar, who is a Chicago-based multidisciplinary artist who has a lot of community engagement in her local community, working around the Cook County jails. And with her inclusion, we are working to support further research of hers through work called Disappearance Jails. The whole entire goal is for her to capture all of the spaces of carceral institutions in all 50 states. And so far, she has Illinois, Ohio, and California. And in working with us, we are adding in Virginia to her roster. So we are working across libraries and interns and data folks to help log and catalog and get images for all of the spaces in Virginia. And with that we do what she calls a punch party, where we perforate the images. So we hold punch images with intentions of removal and liberation, and freedom with our intentions through the image.
Throughout the semester, I've been working with Maria and her team to do the research for disappearance jails, in which we bring together 131 names of the facilities, and any extra information about it, the population, phone numbers, the counties, where are they placed, and then eventually we have collected 131 images of all incarceration facilities in Virginia. This is how you do it. So you grab one of the images of the incarceration facilities and then a hole punch, and then as you are punching the image, you think about alternatives to punishment, and you think about what freedom means to you. And we are punching, we are reflecting on the systems that are currently in place. And eventually it looks like this. So the jail has basically disappeared as the person reflects and thinks about what the process is like. And then eventually the holes that we made from the image are going into here, because Maria is very intentional with making sure that all the materials are used, and that every single part of the process is recorded and archived. This is a project that it's stemmed in Chicago, but it has also gone through Ohio. Well, it's stemmed in Chicago, so Illinois has been done, and then Ohio, and now it's the state of Virginia, and I think they're currently working in the state of Washington.
We have commissioned work with Maria Gaspar with a group called The Innocents, and on March 15th we'll be doing a commissioned work of found objects and policy engagement through music, as well as 18 jail bars that Maria has commandeered from the Cook County Jail that will be played. So there'll be a sonic sculpture, a sonic sound, and a new purpose for these bars that will be a part of the exhibition through performance. Winfred Rembert is as I understand, he is recently deceased, and upon his passing, he became almost a blue chip artist. He's now collected by Hauser and Wirth. He is an artist who uses leather as his substrate. So he tools leather and dyes it, capturing what he calls genre scenes of his past. We talk a lot about how art is usually healing and the way to combat trauma, but for Winfred, it's he is reliving moments of being chased by police in Georgia. He was incarcerated for 7 years, and for those 5 of the 7, he worked on a chain gang, so very extreme labor, and while in prison learned how to tool leather. So we have 2 of his works here, and a lot of video that kind of shares his life, and really happy to have him as part of the show.
I am so happy to have Bill Perthes here from the Barnes Foundation in Philadelphia to talk about his experiences directly with the artists at SCI Phoenix, and he's the main curator of the show.
I couldn't help but think, as Alyssa was talking, that one of the intentions behind the idea of Faces of Resilience is the fact that in SCI Phoenix, which is a maximum security prison, photography is largely illegal.
Mm-hmm.
So the faces and even when film crews go in, they're only shown from behind, so we don't see their faces. So Faces of Resilience was a way to give them the opportunity, if they so desired, to show themselves. But we left it open-ended enough so that, and you see this in many of the works here, where it also gave them room to be able to envision either things that they imagine, freedom or just other things, but also family members, right? So mothers and sons and daughters, And that was, for many of them, that was really important, that they were able to show, for many of them, the idea of resilience was one that they see reflected in their children, that they've, as incarcerated fathers, they've spent, some of them, decades in prison, and so that their children have not had direct contact with them, often have not had direct contact. So to see how they appreciate the struggles that their children have gone through and have been able to largely overcome, so to be able to put their faces out there as well. But also to reflect their own experiences. I think for all that was sort of a central theme that, as this exhibition very much demonstrates, that artists that originally exhibited in the exhibition while they were incarcerated have since been either released, or their sentences have been commuted, or that their sentences have been overturned, really showing the range of, again, lived experiences that these artists have.
Yeah, I think it's very easy to reduce someone down to the worst decision, the worst action that they've ever done, and that's often what we do in our minds when you hear that someone is a criminal or has a record. That's the only lens that you see them through. But through exhibitions like this and other exposure to people who have been incarcerated, and allowing them to tell their own story adds nuance to what put them in the position that they're in and how they could potentially change their lives after experiencing incarceration.
My name is Suave Gonzalez, formerly incarcerated. I served 31 years and 85 days at a life sentence at the State Correctional Institution at Gaspar, and being in solitary confinement is what turned me into an artist.
How I got into arts, I went to Huntington prison named Buddy Martin, and he walks up to me and says, "Excuse me," he says, I couldn't overhear, I overheard you giving this guy the typewriter. That evening, I'm on the block, walking up and down the block because I just got there, and this way he was dealing the cards, I said to myself, he's a mechanic. So I became his friend. Just so happened, this guy's an artist in the craft shop. So he said, "Look, Rod," he said, "I can get you a job up in the craft shop as a janitor." I said, "Perfect." So I go up there and I'm working there a while, and he's starting to show me how to graph a picture, because I can't draw. I can't even draw a pencil.
I decided that I wanted to have a piece of the place that raised me, a piece of the place that turned me into a man. So I started chipping paint from the walls and incorporated it into my art. So when you see the piece of metal, that's a piece of metal that come in the notebooks. That was considered contraband in the prison system. You're not supposed to have it because you could create a shank out of it. So I took one that I found from the guards and I incorporated with the art. The shoestrings, what you see a shoestring, they serve as a noodle for the can. That's actually came from a pair of Timberland boots, because in the prison system in PA, they banned Timberland boots from the whole state prison system. And anything with the Timberland boots got you solitary confinement. So I just took one and added to my artwork and just started incorporating it, because they said that I destroyed state property, which was the prison, because I chipped the paint off the wall in my cell and used it for art. And since I didn't or wouldn't tell them where I got my contraband from, they said, "Okay, you can go to hole. You're going to solitary confinement." So they gave me 7 months in solitary confinement. Every piece of material you see in this picture come from SCI Phoenix, which is now closed. It's banned.
I didn't conceptualize this picture, right? I didn't have this in mind when I did this picture. I do what they call discovery art. I'm not a conceptual artist because I don't have a good imagination. I said, then they look like cell blocks. I said, well, cell blocks, a lot of people died in prison that I know, who were friends of mine, right? So I started putting bodies, drawing this, drawing it. I just randomly went through this. And before you know it, this is what came up. This is me on the top here, right here. And I'm looking down at this. And here it is. This is the medical department. That's the all-seeing guard in prison. This is the administration, always looking, all right? And here are the trucks. They come in, and they go out after they pick our bodies up. And so that's, and I wrote here, help, because people need help in prison before they die, not after they die. My combination to get out of prison, and I lit a candle on behalf of those people who died in prison. And I was doing time. And that was me too down there trying to get out that door. I did that in 2019. Knowing the theme, I consider myself very fortunate that my mind allowed me to honor those people who died in prison, even though I didn't have an intent. It speaks for them. That's what I think of. And I like the architecture. I like the perspective that I try to create depth in the picture other than the theme. I wanted to be an interesting interior. As I was doing it, I realized that. I said, I just want a flat dimension spotlight. So I was fortunate to learn a little bit about perspective, at least one or two, And I put art boards here because I'm an artist. That's why I put them there. I'm very fortunate. To have met the people who influenced me that I could do this. Because I was a punk on the street, and they introduced me to a new world. That's why I'm standing here today. It's a beautiful world.
And I think it's important because art is the only thing that's going to bring everybody together. Because there's two things in my world that I know people love. It's art and music. And we might not like each other, but we could have a long conversation about art and still not like each other, but we could have that conversation.
In fact, I've made a saying, when I see people now and I say goodbye to them, I say, may the arts and life be kind to you, because the arts have been kind to me.
It's great to be back at George Mason and to see how Faces of Resilience has grown and expanded. Alyssa, you've done a really fantastic job.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Small differences that can make a tremendous difference in a person's life.
Yeah. Having your eyes open, like, oh my, like, wow, moment. Yeah.
And we talked a little bit earlier about how the exhibition came to be here from the Barnes, but getting together gives us an opportunity to think again about the long process it took and the other contributors that helped bring us all together.
Yeah, we really appreciated working with the Carter School. That really brings a whole other lens really to the work.
Yeah, and I know our colleague Michael P. Smith, who was a student at the Barnes and was in the room and just in awe, right, as he explained to me of the work where his class was. So that was kind of like the seed that kind of started this whole evolution of engagement.
That's exactly right. We owe a lot to Michael, who sort of saw the exhibition and thought of this as something that maybe could come to George Mason, which I had never considered, putting me in touch with you folks, and then that series of conversations about just the logistics of doing it. I've learned so much, and as we've talked about, right, we all have. Then seeding the idea that maybe this is something that other people elsewhere in the country might want to say, and so creating an opportunity to be able to travel the exhibition.
Well, that's something we want to explore in the future.
Definitely.
Not that we've ever done that before, but I think there could be a lot of interest in this, or a book, especially a book would be something we could talk about. We're very lucky to have as part of our lecture series the artist Cheryl Rowland, who himself was wrongly accused but convicted of a crime and spent time in prison as a juvenile in his teens. And so it took him, and it was, he found out about this. It was a mistaken identity case, but nevertheless, there was sufficient evidence to convict him. So when he was finally exonerated, when he finally was released, he took it as a political stance to wear the orange jumpsuit as a form of embodying his experience in prison, but bringing it into public space and using it as a performance vehicle. He's also gone on to make sculptures that reference making art in prison, and including using Kool-Aid as the coloring device, but also making cells that also correspond to basketball courts, and like really conceptual, very sophisticated work. So we were super lucky to have him come, and it was a coincidence because the sociology department had him coming in the day before our thing anyway to talk to the sociology class. So we had another point of intersection with the university. So that was super cool.
I know learning about how Cheryl was repurposing materials and how he didn't really have an art practice while he was incarcerated, but he decided to really start repurposing things like Kool-Aid in artwork afterward, and it reminded me of my uncle was incarcerated for most of my childhood, and he would mail us all, the whole family home, different cards and things, and I always wondered, how is he creating these really beautiful, colorful paintings and cards, and I knew that they didn't have access to traditional art supplies, so when I got a phone call from him, I asked him, and he said, oh, well, we soak M&Ms and Skittles in water and create watercolors out of them, and then we transfer it over to the paper and things like that. So I just thought it was really interesting, and then the Kool-Aid reminded me of that. So it's interesting. And then Suave, who's in the show, he's one of the 14 artists from SCI Phoenix. One of his pieces, the Big House Noodle Soup, really resonates with me too, because he was in solitary confinement when he created it and ended up chipping paint off of the walls and incorporating it into the work. And he mentioned that the pair of Timberland boots that they were all allowed to have were suddenly decided to be contraband, so they were all revoked. And instead of giving them the shoelaces from the Timberland boots, he incorporated it into this piece, Big House Noodle Soup. So I loved it. I'm especially into mixed media art, so I love that piece.
And the title Contraband is the title, or the word contraband is the title of one of Eddie Ramirez's pieces. Again, a mixed media piece. And Eddie's story is, like Cheryl Rowland's, is, although even more tragic than that. Eddie spent 27 years incarcerated for a crime that now the district attorney is unwilling to continue to convict. The evidence is so badly tainted, and witnesses have been corrupted. So his is such a telling tale of somebody that has endured, so long, knowing that he was innocent, and yet he survived, and now is an activist for others.
Yeah, it seems like the potential for activism is so huge. Like every state has different regulations and procedures, and it's just so complex. And yet this doesn't really surface as a mainstream political issue very much, even though every time you think about it, you realize how completely absurd and meaningless and ineffective it is as a so-called solution. It is actually, it's kind of a solution, in the worst sense of the word, to problems that are actually caused elsewhere. They're more systemic.
That's right.
So yeah, I really wish that we could see a more broad-based political discussion with this type of work. And I think it's great that art talks to it, but it's going to even take more than that. That art can be instrumental in some sense, but it's a change in people's minds. And of course art can do that, but to what extent can it do that? Even the movies, there are many great movies, even those have a hard time impacting. So I have to say that it's just surprising that there isn't a broader outcry against this, because it's so clearly not right.
Yeah, I mean, coming into this topic again, not being very novice of everything. You know, my intent was, but okay, what's the call to action? What can we do? Like, what can I provide as a resource for others coming in here seeking a something? Like, see if they want to be an ally, how can I connect them to do a something? So I'm digging in for calls to action. You know, besides like write your congressman. You know, like response. So I actually got a couple of different tips from Gilda Shepherd, who's the director of Since I've Been Down. And Yasmin, you touched on something that was paramount for her earlier. For her, as a call to action, was recognizing that members who are incarcerated at a young age are not like fully mentally developed. The frontal lobes are not, like the brain development is not, they're not fully grown, you know. So to punish them at that age is wrong. So recognizing that. Also, before installing this work, I was traveling through the South and got a chance to visit the Equal Justice Legacy Museum. So the Just Mercy, the movie that Brian Stevenson did with sexy Michael B. Jordan. I will say absolutely. But that was a catalyst for folks to really understand, you know. And so, like the museum really goes through how the touch points of slavery and mass incarceration have like a full intersection. And some of the works in here speak to that, you know. So it's really how these points really can be, but it is a mental shift of those. But it will be like a nationwide policy, something for it to happen.
It's one of the things actually that I'm proud of in how the Barnes annually exhibits this kind of work, is that it's in a space that's embedded in the collection itself. So people aren't, it's not segregated. And the majority of people that experience it do so accidentally. Mm-hmm. They're walking from one gallery to a next, and they're looking at Renoirs and Cézannes, and suddenly they come upon this work. And what has been so rewarding is standing outside that space and watching people as they pass and wondering, are they going to stop? Are they going to go in? Are they just going to glance in and then keep going? How many people, how many visitors take the time to go in? And because so many of the works are text heavy, to watch them stand and read and reflect and talk to one another about it. And that's part of what I hope one of the outcomes is that people go away and they think maybe a little differently, or maybe they think about something they hadn't thought of before. And if we can do that little bit, I think that's something.
So is the barn space the gallery space of SCI? So like, are all the works that come out of this exchange, are they all displayed essentially at
So
Barnes?
every summer we have a 6-week special exhibition of work that always includes works from the artists at Phoenix, and then also a group of at-risk young adults that are working with mural arts. But it's in this classroom space that's actually inside the galleries of the barn. So it's not we have a special exhibition space. It's not segregated like that. Mm-hmm. It's embedded in the permanent collection.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this has been such a great experience working with you, Bill, and with the Barnes, and with all of our other partners. Like, this really exemplifies the type of programming we want to do, the type of issues we want to engage. We believe strongly in the power of the art to speak volumes, but maybe even silently, or voices in people's heads that can be activated to make change. I mean, social change is a complicated process, and it's going to take dedication. And dedication comes from the heart and from the mind getting together. So that's going to go.
And Don, we share a commitment to changing people's minds, to raising awareness of issues that affect people that don't have a voice in the conversation. And so we have to add our voice, we have to raise our voices and speak for them. And I hope people that come and experience this exhibition here and hopefully elsewhere, go away thinking differently about this issue, and not just think about it, but maybe do something about it.
We did it.